Welcome to the Partnernomics Show, where industry thought leaders discuss the hottest topics in partnerships, ecosystems, and innovation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Partnernomics Show. Great to be with you. Today, we have Ed Kerr with us. Ed, how are things going today?
Good, Mark. Good. Thanks for having me on, man.
Man, it's so good to be chatting with you again. Man, I'm really looking forward to having people understand and hear your story. I feel like I have interviewed literally hundreds and hundreds. I think I have interviewed hundreds of different CEOs and entrepreneurs over the last 10 or 15 years, but you have an interesting path that you've taken. I can honestly say I have not interviewed anyone that's had your path, but we'll dive into that a little bit more. Ed, before we kind of jump into your awesome company and what you've been doing the last many years, man, tell us about what was the big start? What's kind of the hometown? Where did you go to school? What was the first, I guess, 10, 15 years of life like?
Just like real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of the accidental founder or CEO. It's kind of a strange path, but grew up in Kansas City, which is where I am currently. But went to college in Tennessee and Vanderbilt in Nashville, and I was a history major. Always wanted to explore the entertainment industry, but I'd never acted before. But I always thought it was something I could potentially do. So when I graduated from college, I just moved out to LA and ended up spending 32 years there. I was an actor for 20 years, full time, mostly television, but film too. And then kind of accidentally ended up in technology because one of my best friends from college, actually my best friend from college, he had always wanted to make a movie, and so we were going to make a movie together. And it's a long story, but instead of making a movie, we built a software application, and it was kind of an acting machine, sort of karaoke for acting. And so it allowed people to reenact scenes from famous movies together from phone to phone. And we ended up making deals with all the movie studios. You could reenact scenes from some of the biggest movies ever made. And it was really a lot of fun. We were one of the favorite apps of the year for Apple. We executed really well on it. And ultimately, it's just we couldn't grow significantly because the content that came out of it was just two talking heads. So even though it was a really cool experience, it didn't generate a lot of viral content that would get shared at a high velocity. So organic growth was always going to be a challenge. But we built this conversation simulator that we got patents around, and our investors and a bunch of people all along had said, "Hey, you should use this for sales training to automate role play for training purposes." And so we ended up pivoting into the B2B SaaS space and into the sales enablement world and sales readiness world. So I went from being an actor to being building an application to being a startup founder in social media, then to being in the training space. But where the acting stuff still comes into play is we're in conversation training. That's what we do. And I certainly study that a lot as an actor, just how to conduct or replicate an intentional conversation on stage or in front of a camera, and how you might do it in a sales context. So,
Man, I got to dive back into like the whole acting thing. So how in the world do you go from a history major into acting? I mean, did you act in high school and drama, that sort of stuff?
no, I really was kind of did more sports. So, but I don't know. I did a play in fifth grade, and I had one line, and I got a laugh, and so I think kind of the bug kind of stayed there. Um, but when you're a history major in college, and you graduate. I mean, what are you going
You
to
got
do?
to
You
find what else you're going to do,
teach
right?
history, I
What's my
guess,
real
right?
career going to be?
Yeah, I was just kind of a generalist, so I had to find a job. But I just kind of felt when I was young, if I didn't try it, I'd always wonder. And so I just went out and actually started taking acting classes and worked as a waiter for, my first 2 years. I had no money. And then luckily I ended up getting a talent deal with NBC, like right on about the 2 year anniversary of my being in LA. And that allowed me to quit my waiter job and just kind of act full time from that point forward. But I was just something I just wanted to try. So I had a 3 year plan, and I ended up staying there 32. So
Yeah, that is wild. So what's one of the things I've always been curious about? So I guess I have a horrible memory. I can remember faces, I can remember names to a decent amount, but I'm just flabbergasted whenever I see actors and just like see and learn of like what they do and how they have to memorize, all of these different lines. Is there some method to the madness, or how does it actually work whenever you're doing either 30 minutes, sitcom sort of a thing, or a longer film? How do you do that? Is there some science behind it?
I think some people are more are better at it than others, and in some cases there's a greater need for it than like when you're doing a sitcom, let's say you're doing it in front of a live audience, and usually it's a pretty short scene, or and you've been rehearsing for 4 days. So the repetition is the key thing. And when you're repeating something and you're going through the blocking, meaning you're walking to a certain spot where you might say a line or handle a prop or whatever, all of that begins to sink in the more repetition you have. People who are doing plays on Broadway who have to memorize, an hour or 2 hours of dialogue, that's a lot, right? But they rehearse for weeks. But I think it all starts mostly with really understanding the why, knowing, where you are and the circumstances under which the dialogue comes out and the intention of it all. And so that part is really critical, is making sure that you know that. And then somehow your brain begins to associate a lot of the why and a lot of the movements with the lines or the words. So, but that was one of the reasons that we found that there was really an application in sales training, because when you're a salesperson, it's really a contrived or a
It's
it's a
rehearsed, right?
no,
I mean,
it is, yes, you're following typically a methodology, you're sharing some information that you've learned and are, relaying. Um, but it's a conversation that is often really difficult to have, because you have an agenda, and the person you're speaking with, your prospect, knows you have an agenda, is often resistant to that agenda. And so there's some conflict there, and you've got to gain alignment, and you've got to share information and overcome resistance. And it's an artful process, and very difficult for a new person to learn, while at the same time learning sort of the foundational information they need within that role of that company or that industry, particularly if it's all new to them. So much like an actor learning the lines in a script or for a play, uh, it requires a lot of study, a lot of repetition and familiarity. And you better be confident, because you get on stage and you don't know your lines, you don't know the play. Just like an athlete who gets onto the field and doesn't know the play, terrifying, right?
and
So
it shows really quickly, right?
yeah, and that's why we really felt like the product that we've built, that is absolutely 100% all about conversation training specific to that, is really critical, and where we could help a lot in that area.
Okay,
So
so let's dive into the product itself and like how it works. And it leverages AI. There's some AI that's like a huge, obviously a huge buzzword out there. Everybody's leveraging AI, but I love what your solution is. Would you kind of unpack a little bit more of exactly what are the use cases for it, and then how does the solution work?
yeah, so the use cases are really anytime there is a salesperson or a sales team, and we typically work with companies where there are large dispersed sales teams. And let's take, for example, the case of new hires. They're onboarding lots of people. They might have high churn, but they've got to get these people to a certain state of competence, a certain level of fluency as quickly as possible, so they can get them out there selling. They can't have them in training forever. But what we found is that in most training programs are kind of incomplete, because they'll bring people in and they'll rush them through a lot of information in 2 weeks or 2 months, however long it might be. And then they're out on the phones or out into the field interfacing with customers, and they're not fluent yet on that sale. that training hasn't been reinforced with active learning, with articulating what they've been taught. Because there's a big difference between knowing something and being able to explain it, right? So we're kind of we fill in that gap, and so when we work with a company, we'll understand. We learn really quickly what their sale is. We want to understand everything about their sale, the sales process. Do they follow a particular sales methodology? Where is that documented? Do they use scripts in their training or not? Whether they do or don't, they can work with us, but we complement whatever their curriculum is. And we take that sales methodology and we hopefully will distill it into actionable conversational strategies that their people can practice and learn and apply in real time. So it's an interesting area because I think it's an area that's been the biggest, most overlooked failure of any sales team. Because for years, people have just understood that it's just a problem that can't be addressed because you can't keep people in training forever and you can't train them continuously in the field because the technology wasn't there. But now that we have AI, the AI becomes a practice partner and
I was
also
going to say,
becomes.
like, whenever I think back to sales training that I've been through, there's all this role play, and certainly it gives you an opportunity to kind of jump in the batter's box, take some swings. But how do you know if it's really good? I mean, it gives you an opportunity to think through what you would say, how you would say it, kind of handling objections, but it doesn't mean that you're improving or doing it correctly. It's one of the things that I love about a system like yours is it truly kind of takes that employee in the training to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, where we start off, and by the way, we started doing this a number of years ago before conversational AI was where it is today. And we took our acting machine, and for which we have lots of patents around, and we got patents around it for sales training. And that was really a script-based system where we would go into a company and say, hey, who sells your products the best? Who's the very best at conducting a prospecting call, at overcoming objections, whatever. And let's record that person. Let's capture what they're doing, what they're saying, so that everybody else could have access to it and perhaps do it the way Mark does it, right? And so that's really the simple part of what we built initially, and that's still a big component of our program, where we'll go in and develop really best practice talk tracks that are typically given to us by the subject matter experts or the best people in the company. And that's a library that learners can draw from. But then they've got to go in and conduct a sale or a sales situation with the AI, and they've got to win over the AI and overcome all kinds of resistance. And then the AI, after that session is done, the AI turns into a coach and tells them what they did well or didn't do well, and all of it is tracked by our system and reported to management. So it's a fully automated way to bring someone from script-based training to scrimmaging to really kind of getting certified to be in front of a customer.
So Ed, it sounds like a system like yours gives them. I was just thinking back to different sales trainers, sales leaders, sales executives that I know, and they spend a lot of their time, or at least the good ones, or I mean, they spend a lot of their time doing coaching and mentoring and all of, but it takes up so much of their time.
Mhm.
I think a solution like yours can give those sales executives so much more time back by, moving a lot of that work into a software technology like yours.
Absolutely. In fact, we felt like we always had half a product until AI came along. We've been developing this AI piece for about a year and a half. But previously, our product required that the managers watch some videos and provide feedback, and now they no longer have to do any of that. So we literally have developed what is essentially a virtual sales manager, and so the manager has perfect visibility into everything. But all of this is done for them. The feedback is immediate to the learner, and the learner can access it anywhere, anytime, 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and it gives great transparency and accountability into the consistency that management is looking for. So we feel like we can strongly get, thousands of salespeople on a shared message pretty quickly, very efficiently and effectively.
It's something that a word comes to my mind from conversations that we've had as I was learning of what the Practis platform is. You've mentioned the word like a batting cage. Being able to use something like that. I think we're both sports junkies, so that really resonates with me. But can you talk a little bit more about like how it's a batting cage and why having a batting cage for a salesperson is so important and how it helps their proficiency?
Yeah, well, I mean, humans are designed to learn through repetition, and we don't want to create robots. We've never wanted that. But as an actor, when I was learning lines, as long as I knew what I was saying, I needed to run them. I had to say them over and over again, and eventually, that just became just second nature, right? And so that's really what we've brought into this experience, and that's where we have a real unique position in the sales enablement world because no one can do this script-based training through repetition like we can with our conversation simulator. And it is like a batting cage, and we use lots of sports analogies. Imagine a sports team where they didn't practice and they didn't practice throughout the season. What if they just did training camp and then they quit? And then, how well would they play week to week? So our challenge was to deliver this mobile facility, and that's another thing that's great about our product. It's mobile. We meet the learners on their cell phones wherever they are, and they're literally going in there and they have access to just the best kinds of arguments, best winning arguments that the organizational intelligence has distilled for them, right? And that's what we do because there's too many salespeople at the end of a fire hose all the time, and they've got all this information. Like, let's just cut it down to when they say this, you ask this, or when they say this, you say this, and let's keep it simple, especially for someone who's new, and that's really all we do.
So, Ed, I know some of your clients now have hundreds or even thousands of field sales folks, and just trying to wrap my head around what that must be like to manage that, or even kind of manage the learning paths and tracks for them. Sounds like a big task. Can you just speak to how, like tactically, how do sales managers, sales leaders, sales training organizations, how do they utilize Practis and kind of deploy it out to this remote sales force?
Yep. Great question. Well, we're heavily focused on ROI and most importantly on revenue. So when we start with a company, we like to look at where's the biggest revenue opportunity or the place where they're bleeding the most. And it might be that the conversion rate of their prospecting calls are really low. Or maybe only 10 or 15% of their people really are confident and skilled at prospecting. Everybody else is really weak. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why they're churning. And if that's the case, we'll go in and say, okay, well, why are those 80% struggling? Why are do they know what to say? Let's find out. And so we'll use our tool to first get a diagnostic and understand what are they saying right now? How are they conducting that call? And then if they're not doing it well, we'll know really quickly, and we'll introduce them into a curriculum that includes script-based training and then various levels of difficulty with AI personas. And then we'll put them through the paces through that batting cage. And the goal is that we'll get them really buttoned up within 30 days, and they feel bulletproof because they've gotten reps and they've gotten in a psychologically safe environment. They've gotten immediate feedback, and it's amazing the transformation that takes place. You'd be blown away. So
Ed, what is from a learner's perspective? Say I've just been hired on with an organization, so I'm trying to learn the products, the services. What's the objections? How do I develop some initial rapport? I'm trying to learn all of these things. From a new employee's perspective, I'm going through the onboarding. How would I use Practis? How often do I use it? You mentioned that it's kind of a mobile first platform, so it's being sent to my mobile device. What is that like from an employee's perspective?
Yeah, so I think it depends from one company to the next. But again, just like the last example, and when we go in with a company, we really don't want to create talk tracks and learning curriculum all at once around everything. We just want to focus on one thing at a time. And we want to teach one thing at a time. We'll start in one place, prove it out, and then move to the next priority. But if you're a new person, what are the most important conversations that you're going to need to have on day one when you're out in the field? What are those? And that's where we start. It'll be, so the curriculum for a new hire will probably be a lot lighter weight than a tenured rep. But what that learner would do is all that initial training that they got, let's say in those first 2 weeks, whatever needed to be conveyed to the customer in critical moments is what's sort of included in our app. And so we're hopefully distilling everything they've learned down to actionable conversation that they'll have with the customer. And we like to focus on conversion opportunities. So let's say that, what does that that first conversation look like? What's your objective and how should you conduct it? How do you deliver the value proposition to the business? How do you define the competitive edge of the company? How do you overcome the most common objections? How do you speak to value versus price? How do you conduct a closing conversation? So that might be 6 conversations we'd model and make sure that they've got exposure to the best practices and as many reps as possible, and then they could actually persuade the most difficult version of our AI.
I think another thing that you've mentioned is how some of your clients use it to cross sell and upsell. It's not just the initial, sell that you're making, but even for field service folks that are out there that might not even traditionally, be in a traditional sales role, but giving them some training of, how they might be able to pop open new opportunities to sell additional products and services that your company offers. Would you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's another thing that we really look for opportunities there where we can drive incremental revenue. If we can take anything that's been a cost center and mitigate that with a little bit of revenue and turn it into a profit center, or at least part of it, that can make a big impact on a company. So obviously, in the home services industry, there are tons of customer-facing technicians, many of whom are not sellers. They don't want to sell. They're not inclined to sell, but they're in a great position to make observations about a homeowner's property and make some recommendations that could be considered certainly an upsell. But getting them to initiate that conversation is often difficult because they don't feel comfortable. And so that's an area where we can really help just help them upsell one thing and not sell it necessarily, just really kind of help them share their recommendations. And so we'll craft the right type of language in partnership with their thought leaders, and then help them, get to a point where they're really encouraged and kind of eager to perform that function.
Well, Ed, you had mentioned an earlier word or acronym, ROI. It's something that's on all of our CEO, founders, entrepreneurs. It's what's on our mind. From an ROI perspective, what kind of things are your clients seeing from your solution? And a lot of times training can be expensive. And a lot of times when there's a downturn, training is oftentimes one of the first things to go. But I have my own humble opinion of if that's accurate or not. But man, we see like massive turnovers. There's like from an ROI perspective, there's a lot of opportunity to leverage training and knowledge to significantly impact ROI for companies. Um, can you share a little bit of what maybe a couple examples of what your clients have seen from an ROI perspective, and like how long does that take to get the return?
Uh, Usually well, again, it kind of depends, but we like to say we can do it in 60 days, 60, 90 days, we should be able to prove it. It might take 6 months in another situation. Um, but, uh, but we're constantly looking to measure the impact of our system before and after, right? So typically when we go into an organization, we'll identify one sales initiative, one opportunity that we can kind of assess and optimize conversational expertise around. So, um, yeah, let's say there's a particular product or service that's being sold for which they have historical metrics, and we'll go into a particular team and we'll say, all right, who's selling this the best? We'll do an initial diagnostic, and we'll have them all go up against a particular persona of our AI and get kind of a baseline understanding of the skill sets of the team, and then we'll start training them, and we'll really put them through the paces. And the goal is to get them all bulletproof with the difficult AI. And then we'll compare the before and after on practice, and how did that impact their production out in the field. You know, the way you measure any training program is, did the people engage with the training? Did they learn what you wanted them to learn? Did they apply it in the field? And did it realize the goals of the organization? And so everything that we do is built around that framework. It's a guy named Kirkpatrick came up with that training framework years ago. And because we have to win the case with the CFO, so we look at every one of our implementations as a case study, and we're all about revenue. So if we're not paying then at least 10x paying for ourselves, then I think we haven't implemented properly. So that's our measurement, and we can drive revenue improvements of 20% in 60 days. And people think that's crazy. That's so high. Why? How can it be so high? Well, when we go into a company, a lot of times we'll ask the most common objection of their company. We'll put it in front of their sales team, and I'll ask the sales leaders themselves, how many of your team do you think will get this right? What percentage? And inevitably they'll say, well, I don't know, 20, 30%. And so then it's kind of like, well, how is that acceptable that 70 or 80% of your salespeople every day don't know what to say? And you're wondering why your revenue is suffering. And so what they'll look at are the lagging indicators. They'll look at, oh, we didn't hit our quarterly numbers. Well, why not? Let's look at the leading indicators. What are they doing? Let's change behavior. Let's first assess the behavior. Do they know what to say? Is that causing them to be reluctant and to pick up the phone fewer times? Is it causing them to quit? Are they not making sales, not making money? So you shine a light there, and it's amazing what you see. So
you mentioned the word confidence earlier in our conversation, and I wrote it down here. That is so huge when I think about, being in a sales role and successful salespeople. I mean, the one word that I would use that can, describe them is they're confident. And, to your point, if somebody doesn't know what to say or when to say it or how to say it, they won't have the confidence. And to the point that you made earlier, you can see it. If they're not prepared, if they're not confident, if they're not, running the right play, you can see it.
Yep. Yeah. And they really need to understand when you're conducting an intentional conversation, meaning you're working towards an outcome that you're seeking, right? And you need to get aligned with someone. And there are various ways that you can do that. But it's a craft, and you've got to be mindful of all the cues you're getting, and you've got to be mindful of the information you need to give and get in order to arrive at hopefully a successful conclusion. And if you don't really have much confidence and you don't know where you're going or know how to get there, good luck.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
terrifying. It's not pleasant at all. And that happens over and over and over again in conversations, billions of them, right?
Yeah.
Across the world. So anyway, that's what we're trying to help with, and I think we've really learned so much over the years to where now we've got this wonderful new technology. We really know well how to apply it in concert and in symbiotic nature with this kind of script-based training. That's really great.
Yeah, I mean, it's been super impressive. I really enjoyed learning about it so far. So, Ed, if somebody's interested in learning more about Practis and the work that you have, or maybe checking out a demo or just kind of chatting with you, what's some ways they can get a hold of you?
Probably the best is just to go to just through our website, Practis, Practis.ai, or track me down on LinkedIn, Edward Kerr, Kerr on LinkedIn. I love talking to anybody and everybody who's interested in learning more about the conversation training space and what we do and how we do it. The way we do it is unique to anybody else. No one else can do it like we do it, and I think our methodology is really fantastic, especially for new hires. So that's really where a big part of our focus is. But we work incredibly well with tenured reps as well.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing the insights, telling your life story about acting, educating us a little bit on that, and about Practis, man. Good luck.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Partnernomics Show. Don't forget to subscribe to get the newest episodes at thepartnernomicsshow.com.